telephone plug is a type of connector used to connect a telephone set to the telephone wiring inside a building, establishing a connection to a telephone network. It is inserted into its counterpart, a telephone jack, commonly affixed to a wall or baseboard. The standard for telephone plugs varies from country to country, though the RJ11 modular connector has become by far the most common. A connection standard, such as a J11, specifies not only the physical aspects of an electrical connector, but also the pinout, that is the assignment or function of each contact. Modular connectors are specified for the registered jack series of connectors, as well as for Ethernet and other connectors, such as 4P4C modular connectors, the de facto standard on handset cords, often improperly referred to as J connectors. Historically telephones were typically owned by the telephone company and were usually permanently wired to the telephone line. However, for many installations it was necessary or convenient to provide mobile telephone sets that could be moved to a different location within the customer's premises. For this purpose telephone companies developed jacks and plugs with a varying number of contacts. Before 1930 concentric connectors with 3 contacts were sufficient. The most common connector type in the Bell system in the United States was developed by 1930. It was a cube-shaped 4-prong connector type with uneven prong spacings to prevent improper insertion of the plug into the jack. This type was redesigned as a round version in the mid-1960s. The 4-prong connector type was used for several decades until it was superseded by the modular connector in the 1970s. Many countries initially used different specifications for connectors, and some national connector types remain in service, but few are used for new installations for which modular connector types are prescribed. Photos. Connections. The installation of a conventional wired telephone set has 4 connection points, each of which may be hardwired, but more often use a plug and socket, telephone line to phone cord, the wall jack. This connection is the most standardized, and often regulated as the boundary between an individual's telephone and the telephone network. In many residences, though, the boundary between utility-owned and household-owned cabling is a network interface on an outside wall. All wall jacks in the home are part of the household's internal wiring, telephone cord to telephone set base. This connection is generally not regulated, but instead follows de facto standards. It is often a 6P4C connector, which is often RJ11, but may be proprietary or hardwired. Telephone set base to handset cord. By de facto standard, this is usually a 4P4C connector, handset cord to handset. The handset end of the straight-through handset cord also uses a 4P4C connector. Some of these may be absent. Wired telephones may not have a separate base and handset. The defining characteristic of wireless telephones is that they do not have a handset cord, and the defining characteristic of mobile telephones is that they do not have a phone cord. Wiring. A standard specifies both a physical connector and how it is wired. Sometimes the same connector is used by different countries but wired in different ways. For example, telephone cables in the UK typically have a BS6312 plug at the wall end and a 6P4C or 6P2C modular connector at the telephone end. This latter may be wired as per the RJ11 standard, or it may be wired with pins 2 and 5, as a straight-through cable from the BT plug. Thus cables are not in general compatible between different phones, as the phone base may have a socket with pins 2 and 5, or have an RJ11 socket. When modular connectors are used, the latch release of the connector should be on the ridge side of flat phone wire in order to maintain polarity. Though 4 wires are typically used in US phone cabling, only 2 are necessary for telecommunication. In the event that a second line is needed, the other 2 are used. Compatibility. Different telephone connections are generally compatible with the use of an adapter, the physical connector and its wiring is the primary incompatibility. C. Gallery of telephone adapters. List of plugs. Modular connectors 4P4C and 4P2C for handset cables, 6P2C for RJ11 single telephone line, 6P4C for RJ14 two telephone lines, 6P6C for RJ25 three telephone lines, 8P8C for RJ61X for telephone lines, RJ48S and RJ48C for 4-wire data lines, RJ31X single telephone line with equipment disconnect, RJ38X. Other connectors 50-pin miniature ribbon connector for RJ21X, used for up to 25 lines for multi-line phones such as the ITT2564, key telephone systems such as the 1A2 key system, and PBX systems. International standards RJ11, by far the most common, BS6312, British, F010, French, TAE connector, German. National standards TDO connector, Austria, WT4, Polish national standard. Traditionally, the fifth plastic pin disconnects 1I1/4 F capacitor that shorts telephone line while plug is not inserted into socket. In modern mix it does nothing electrical, and capacitor compartment was reused for additional RJ11 socket. Legacy 600 series connector, Australia, Protea, South Africa, SS455-1550, Sweden and Iceland, Telebra S plug, Brazil, Tripolar plug, Italy, Ticino 2021, Italy. List of telephone connectors used in various countries and territories. This list covers only single-line telephone plugs commonly used in homes and other small installations. There are 44 different variations of plugs, including an Israeli version of BS6312 with different internal wiring of the pins, plus hard wiring to a junction box with no adapter. Special telephone sets use a variety of special plugs, for example micro ribbon for key telephone systems. See also, power plugs sockets by country, network interface device. References. External links. Telephone plug list at Steve Cropler's Worldwide Phone Guide, How to Install Telephone Wiring.